This week on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast, September's life changing astrology, which is packing and punching left and right with Pluto's final retrograde in Capricorn and this really transformative Pisces lunar eclipse. That's going to be a game changer for all of us. We're going to look at today how these, especially cosmic events, are going to shake up everything, including the United States election, as well as, of course, your personal growth. We're also tackling this week generational victimhood, and how setting boundaries can break ancestral patterns. We're going to look at how to set boundaries because I promise you that you've never heard about boundaries spoken in this way before. And then finally, of course, we're going to get to our weekly tarot reading, which is going to offer us some really important ancestral wisdom, ancestral guidance that's going to help you move from struggle to sovereignty. All on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast today. So, welcome to our global initiative dedicated to helping women like you holistically heal body, mind, and spirit in order to break free from generational cycles of emotional pain and of trauma. By integrating Kundalini Yoga therapy and A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy, we disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns and we create a safe, nurturing space for holistic healing to occur. So welcome, beautiful sovereign sisters. It's an honor to be here with you on this very epic week. Whenever, regardless of when it is that you are listening to this podcast episode, always in divine timing. But if you are with us this week, we are closing out the month of August with a huge bang and entering into September with an even bigger bang, because as the calendar days turn and we literally welcome the month of September, we kick off the month with some major astrological transits that are going to really create the theme for the entire month. So let's break down. I want to prepare you all, because if we don't prepare for our success, then what the heck are we preparing for, right? As above, so below, the cosmos and the position of the planets and the zodiac signs absolutely tell a story as to what it is that is happening in our personal lives and in the collective consciousness. So what I want to do is I want to start off by sharing with you all the major transits. I believe there's 5 major transits I counted in the month of, there's many more, but there are 5 today that I want to really speak on. And I want to talk about how to prepare for this energy. A lot of it is going to be relevant to your own personal birth chart, but it's very easy for you to find out what this means specifically to you. Today, we're going to look at the collective reading, at the collective energy, so that you can understand the theme and you can be very prepared. So right as we kick off the month, like I said, September 1st, which is this year, I believe it's on a Sunday, we move into the first planet of the month going retrograde. Now, good news, bad news, call it what you will. I'm very neutral about planets being retrograde or direct, but the one thing that did change as we closed out the month of August was the fact that Mercury, the planet of communication, could be considered also chaos and technology, was retrograde from the beginning of the month and now finally has gone direct here right at the end of August. So we come into the month of September with a couple of planets being retrograde, but then we have this very, very interesting energy that kicks off the month with the first planet that's going to be going retrograde for the month going retrograde. And who I'm referring to is Uranus. So right on September 1st, right on Sunday, and this is the first week of the month that is going to be pretty volatile and pretty energetic, that leads up to even more volatility as we get closer to the middle of the month. We have Uranus going retrograde in Taurus, and that is happening on September 1st. So mark your calendars. Easy for you to go pull your birth chart, free online, see where Uranus, what house is being magnified by this energy. Because when Uranus, the planet of revolution, of sudden change, of breakthrough, goes retrograde, with that energy is going to bring forth the themes around us, asking ourselves to reflect on things like our values, the material possessions. What this transit encourages us all to do is to really look at innovative ways to find comfort and security. It's time for us to break free from these toxic patterns without overall indulging. So the themes around Uranus going retrograde are all about independence, are all about truth, but inner truth, because direct, it's outer truths being exposed, breakthroughs, right? There's an inner revolution that's happening. There's an inner liberation and freedom that we are working and aspiring to achieve with Uranus going retrograde and making us really aware of these things. It's about looking at unconventional approaches to how we feel safe. And really, to prepare, you have to consider what brings you stability. Because is it the external possessions, or is it more the inner resources? With the Uranus going retrograde, you can expect unexpected insights about your relationship with the physical material world. And that is life changing, because as we take this inner journey with Uranus, it can really align us to our truth without having to continue to identify to those identities and that not only no longer serve us, but that are definitely not who we truly are. So as we kick off the month, we start with Uranus going retrograde, and then on the same day, oh my God, this is so powerful. September 1st, you're gonna feel like a freaking new era is coming in, and there's nothing for you to stop it. We have the second very important transit that will take us into election season, or the election day, that will absolutely be here to reveal where there's continued abuse of power, government, where we need to learn to govern ourselves. Because what I'm referring to is that on Pluto, on September 1st, Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth and transformation, will finally be going retrograde for the last time. And I'm saying this with so much happiness because I am a true Capricorn, but it will finally be going retrograde in Capricorn for the last time until around November 18th. And this is an incredible time to be alive, because this marks the end of a very transformative era, which actually began in 2008. As a Capricorn, my spiritual awakening actually began in 2008 when the real estate market crashed. I was a very young real estate broker. By then, I already had my broker's license, I believe. Yes, that was it. Actually, that was the year that I was getting it. Very successful, to the world, yet everything in my life began to collapse. The real estate market crashed. I was really struggling in all areas of my life. And that is when Pluto began its work on my life, where now, 16 years later in 2024, I am not even close to that person that I used to be in 2008. Pluto, the planet of deep transformation and power dynamics, has been reshaping all of our lives. Wherever Pluto sits in your chart, whatever house, that'll tell you, was it your health? Was it your relationships? Was it your money? Where it was reshaping your entire understanding of authority, of societal structures, of power for over a decade. We're talking about 16 years. So as this final retrograde happens, and particularly how it coincides with the election, November 11th, well, around November being the election, and November 18th, that finally leaving Capricorn to go to Aquarius for the next 16, 20 years. And it will not be back in Capricorn again for another 200 and some years, because Pluto takes about 248 years for it to go through a full cycle. So this is a very rare transit that we only get to experience every 240 years, that is now ending. And now it's like the last hurrah. It's like the last, let me clean up this abuse of power, this ways you govern yourself. Let me finish the metamorphosis and the transformation. Because as we approach this end of 2024 and the presidential election, Pluto's influence is going to basically show us further upheavals and power structures. We're going to continue to see people pay up their karma, reckoning with the country's foundational issues. I have to remind you that the United States of America is going through its Pluto return. That happens typically only for somebody who lives 248 years, a country, a business. This has happened before to other countries, When they went through their Pluto return, like the Roman civilization, Roman Empire, it completely dismantled. It completely fell apart, which is why no one can really even tell you or fathom how this election is going to be completely different, how it's going to change if you haven't noticed yet, and restructure government and the way we govern ourselves and the way we allow others to govern us. There are going to be many shocking truths that will continue to be revealed, which means you have to have a really strong nervous system, because if you don't, you're going to become a part of the sheep that is being herded into these levels of consciousness of fear. Because on a personal level, what this transit is inviting you to do is to reflect on your own relationship with power and authority. How have you transformed since 2008? What are those old structures in your life that are actually ready to be dismantled? This is a time to consolidate the lessons you've learned about personal power and to really prepare for a new cycle of growth, because Pluto now moving from Capricorn to Aquarius is a completely different story. Now we're moving from earth grounded Capricorn government to futuristic pioneer technology community Aquarius, completely different energy, and it's going to stay there for 20 years. So to navigate this energy on September 1st, because it's going to be so potent, Uranus giving you these breakthroughs from your inner world, right? And then Pluto, finishing up the job of your transformation since 2008. What you're going to need to do is you're going to need to focus on releasing what doesn't serve you. Pluto is very karmic, and what doesn't serve you will be snatched from you if you want to continue to learn in the bulldozer method, right? Only through hardship or challenges. We don't have to learn that way. We can be willing to do the inner shadow work. This is the foundation of the work that we do inside of my group coaching program, the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy. This is going to be a time for you to be willing to face your shadows, not focused on the shadows that are being exposed on other people in the government. That's not going to help you. If you focus on your own shadows and transform them, that'll be your source of sovereignty and empowerment. This is not about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. And that's why this transit is crucial and so powerful. So look at what happens, especially between, like I said, September 1st and November 18-ish, which of course we all know that there's a lot that's going to be happening during these times. The next thing that I want to point out are the lunations. So not only are we going to be entering into eclipse season, but right on the beginning of the month, on September 2nd, Monday, right after Pluto goes retrograde, right after Uranus goes retrograde, Pluto has been retrograde. It's just going to go retrograde in Capricorn now again. And then we have Uranus retrograde in Taurus, new moon in perfectionist Virgo. And this is happening on September 2nd, the next day. And this new moon, of course, we know that new moons are all about fresh starts, new beginnings, but you have to think about what Virgo is all about. And I live with the Virgo. My son is a Virgo, so I'm very much familiar, even though I don't have a lot of Virgo in my chart. But Virgos are perfectionists. They are going to, or this energy is going to basically make you feel uncomfortable as it relates to the areas of your health, physical health, of your work, of your daily habits and routines. Virgo is all about improvement, constantly improving himself or herself, right? So analysis, service, this is going to be a time for you to set new intentions, new beginnings as it relates to what? Personal growth, productivity throughout your day, and a lot of physical healing. I really feel that the month of September is going to bring forth so many opportunities for us to do major physical healing. I mean, releasing traumatic memories from the body. If you're preparing for the success, if you are committing to rituals, that's what Virgo is all about. Having a schedule, having those daily habits that are going to lead you to the top of the mountain. So take advantage of that. Start to really think about, before the new moon even gets here, start to think about your rituals, your daily habits, your commitment to your self-care. That's one of the biggest messages that we got this week from the ancestral guidance, which I'll share a little bit later. That was one of the things that we really drove this morning in Satna practice. Is like, what are your daily habits? What is your ritual? How are you going to prepare for the success instead of prepare for your demise? because we're preparing for one or the other. We're just not conscious about it. So that's what this new moon is going to help you. It's going to help you consider setting these very specific, achievable goals that are related to your health or work life. It's going to help you organize your space and streamline these routines so that you can look for ways to be of service to others and, of course, to yourself. And then after the new moon, there's a lot of things that happen that are transits in between. But I want to focus today on these major five. And the next one that I want to talk about, and this is the life-changing, pivotal one that really is going to bring out a closing of a cycle that perhaps you were not even aware of that you were under. And what I'm referring to is the beginning of eclipse season, which actually starts on September 17th. And we call it eclipse season because there's always two eclipses. There's the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse. They come in pairs. And this one that's happening on September 17th is on the full moon in Pisces. So it's a full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. Now, for those that are new to astrology, I want to break down why this one is so significant as it relates to the axis of an eclipse. So let's talk about eclipses in general first. In simple terms, eclipses actually happen when the sun and the moon and the earth, they all align in a very special way. And there are two types of eclipses. There's a solar eclipse, and then there's a full moon. Those happen at the new moons. And then we have a lunar eclipse, and those occur at the full moons. And these are not just regular new or full moons. They're like a supercharged cosmic event that brings major changes, major revelations, major eclipsing of cycles to begin new ones. And now here's where it gets super interesting with this eclipse in September, because eclipses don't happen just randomly. They occur along what we call the eclipse axis, or what is known as the nodal axis. So imagine like a line that's running through the earth. The points where this line intersects with the moon's orbit are called the lunar nodes. Eclipses, they happen when the sun and the moon are actually near these nodes. And what makes this September's lunar eclipse really special is that it's part of a new eclipse cycle for all of us. You see, this axis in Pisces now, slowly moving through the zodiac, it spends about 18 to 19 months in a pair of opposite signs. And what happened was that in July of 2023, this axis started to shift from an Aries Libra axis to a Pisces Virgo axis, completely different vibration, completely different themes, completely different storyline. And what this shift changes the flavor of are eclipses in the lessons that they bring to you. That's how those shifts actually happen. So now, with the North Node now in Pisces and the South Node South Node now in Virgo, North Node means your North Star. That's what you're here to learn. That's what you're here to be guided by. That's what you're here to follow. Those are the biggest lessons you're here to uncoil around your potential. South Node is your karmic past, maybe the lessons you already came with from a past lifetime, from the ancestors. Now being Pisces South Node, Pisces North Node, South Node, and Virgo, now we're being called to a completely different story than Aries and Libra, because now we're being called to balance these two energies, which what is Pisces? Intuition. Pisces is the shaman of the entire zodiac signs. Pisces is about spirituality, about compassion, about sensitivity. While Virgo, here we go again, represents practicality, service, perfectionism, and attention to detail. What a combination. So what this eclipse is doing, it's asking us to find ways to honor both, be in this world but not of it, to be spiritual and practical, to be intuitive but also analytical, heart and mind, which is why a lot of people are going to be struggling, because most of us are not in harmony with both aspects of our totality. We're either too much mind or too much heart. We need to be able to balance and know when to activate each aspect of who we are. But the biggest thing about this eclipse, and this is what I want you to really meditate on, is that this particular eclipse is incredibly significant because it actually marks the end of a cycle that began with a solar eclipse around October 14th, 2023. So I want you to, this is what we did in Satna, our community meditation this morning in our Sovereign Sisterhood Academy, and Satori Vitality and Spirituality. I want you to go back to October 2023, especially around the date October 14th. What was happening in your life? What challenges, what opportunities, what were the things that were slowly starting to be birthed? What cycles were you closing? Were you thinking of moving somewhere else to a new state? Did you sign a contract to buy a house and now you're getting ready to close? Did you meet someone? Did you break up with someone? Health-wise, what was happening? Because during this September 17th, lunar eclipse in Pisces, we actually began the new era of whatever it was that was being closed out then. And here's the thing. For the past year, this is what we've been doing in our academy, and this is the message that I received when I was in ceremony at the top of a beautiful mountain in Costa Rica back in October of 2023. We're hosting the solar eclipse ceremony while I was there, and we were making intentions. And the guide or the leader for the event, for the ceremony, she told us, as you go back to your places where you're going back to, whatever home is to you, or you continue on your path, the one thing you're going to have to work with is how to get out of your own way. Because the thing is that the desires, the manifestations, the intentions that we were filled with during the month of October 2023, they now are ready to be birthed. You've been pregnant. You've been working on getting out of your own way so that you can deliver this baby, this new creation, this new way of being and living. And so what is happening is that as we move into a September 17, 2024 lunar eclipse, guess what? Now it's time for you to step into this new cycle, completely sovereign, released from all old identities. And as much as this could be so beautiful, it's very, very painful because it requires us to grieve the death of an old self in order to welcome. Welcome the new self. One of the things that we're working on inside of our communities in the month of September is we're going to be hosting a rites of passage ceremony of Kundalini yoga, meditation, and A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be merging and having this rites of passage ceremony for our inner child to merge with our highest self, because ultimately they're the same. We've been working on 40 days of activation of the inner child divinity in our communities since last month, which will close out right at the lunar eclipse cycle. And it is so important for us to, by the same token, grieve an old self dying, to also recognize what is happening, open our hearts to gratitude, and then accept the grace that comes with that. So that's what the entire rites of passage fall equinox ceremony is going to be about. Now, this is only open to members, but I am inclined to extend the invitation out to the database, to my email newsletter. So make sure you're signed up to my email newsletter so you can find out more about this event that's going to be epic, which is actually going to be happening right after the eclipse on the fall equinox. Lynn over here says, seeing so many of us go through the same crap with these toxic people, these badly raised, toxic, self-centered, disordered humans. Why are there so many of them? It only makes me so angry. I had to cut them off to live a peaceful life. What's helped me the most is educating myself on codependency and narcissism. Very good, Lynn. And so what we're going to talk about today a little bit more is we're actually going to talk a little bit about setting boundaries and why your energy aligns with these people and not necessarily you being punished. So I promise that we're going to talk about that here in the next segment. But in either case, what we're working with here is, think about it. We have eclipse season. It's going to eclipse these things out of your life. We're now moving into the equinox, and the equinox is such a sacred time of rebirthing. As we step away from the eclipse on September 17th, with way more heightened emotions and sensitivity, right? A stronger connection to our intuition. So much of these hidden truths resurfacing, right? Blurring these boundaries between the physical and also the material. So as I was saying, this particular eclipse is going to help us come into these heightened emotions, right? This sensitivity, this stronger connection to our intuition, where the surface of these hidden truths or forgotten dreams is going to come to the light, where these blurring of boundaries between the physical and spiritual are going to disappear, where we're going to need to balance our spiritual insight with practical action. And that is such beautiful energy on the 17th, because then what happens after this eclipsing is that we move right into the equinox, which is the fall equinox. And that is, for a yogi, someone who meditates, a very important time to be alive. Both equinoxes and the solstices, they mark pivotal portals of energy that are available to us to do some major healing, to disrupt major patterns that no longer serve us. And as we get to the sun entering Libra on September 22nd, which marks the fall equinox, this transit will then shift our focus back to relationships, back to partnerships. Libra, balancer, justice. This is all about encouraging us to be balanced in our divine feminine and in our masculinity, to find harmony and fairness in all areas of our lives. And it's so perfect because after moving from Virgo season and this eclipse, the themes around this fall equinox being in Virgo, especially with the transits around it, it's all about diplomacy, about cooperation, finding equilibrium between self-care and caring for others. Now, I will say that during the week of the 17th through the 22nd, where the fall equinox happens, there are some really uncomfortable transits that I didn't want to go too deep into because it would take me an hour to explain. But Uranus, remember the planet of shock and breakthroughs, is retrograde still. But during that precise week, it's going to be squaring this transit of Libra and also the energy surrounding Pisces and the eclipse, which squares are the most uncomfortable aspects of astrology. There's conjunctions, which are just basically a planet sitting across from each other. But when we're talking about squares, it's discomfort, it's rebellious, it's very, very warlike. And Uranus playing such a big part between September 17th and September 22nd, I really feel that that's when we're going to start to see a lot of these big revelations come to the light about the abuse of government and power. So yes, there's going to be a lot of chaos in the outer world during especially that time. That is why it is more important than ever for you to understand sovereignty and for you to really, really take your power back and, like a tall sequoia tree, be grounded. That's going to be huge for the month of October, September and October and November. But as I looked at this week's guidance and the reading, it's all about us being grounded. So what's really key is for us to remember that as we navigate these really powerful cosmic energies of September, it's so important for you to consider how they interact with our patterns of generational trauma. We all have them. It's time for us to look and acknowledge whether we're really running on a pattern or this is something that's brand new. It's going to be crucial and key for you to shift your focus and how it is that you use this transformative energy so that you can break free from inherited victimhood and set empowering boundaries, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So as you can see, the month of September is jam-packed with transits, astrology, and energy that is going to allow us to fully liberate ourselves and come into our truth if we control and heal our mind and all those patterns that keep us running under the same circumstances. So I'll be sharing more about the astrology throughout the month. As you know, every Monday I go live and I break it down for you exactly what to expect for the week. So make sure that you are subscribed, make sure you have your bell notifications set on so that you can be notified every time I do go live and you can find out what's happening week by week. But overall, September proves to be a month of major metamorphosis, of really moving forward in a huge way and beginning this new era that you've been really rebirthing through since October of 2023. So now that we talked about the astrology of the week, I want to work towards our generational healing topic Today, we're going to be actually exploring how boundaries, ladies, boundaries, and I promise you that you've never heard of setting boundaries away. We're going to talk about them today, about how boundaries can be the gateway for you to overcome the feelings of victimhood that you might not even be conscious about that develop through generational trauma patterns. And this is such a crucial topic because if you remember, you might want to catch last week's podcast episode, or actually the whole entire month of August, because every week we were really touching on spiritual power and spiritual intuition and how we're so afraid of our spiritual power because of the witch's wound and how to even protect yourself. Last week, in fact, we dove deeper into protection and what tantric pressure is all about and what it is. So when now that we've talked about that, it's so important for us to understand that in the patterns of generational healing, like one of the things we talked about last week was how we trigger our own family the most. Yes, when you heal yourself, you heal 7 generations before and 7 generations after you, right? But you have to also understand that the people that get triggered the most on your healing journey are those that are the closest to you, family, friends. Why? Well, because you're triggering something in them. You're triggering an uncoiled potential. And they also, especially if it's a family member or if it's somebody that you know, they're triggered because they're like, who does she think she is? Like, we both came from the same place and she's healing, but I'm not. Like, who does she think she is? And that's why it's so important for us to this week talk about boundaries and what that's all about and why not knowing the truth about setting boundaries and what boundaries truly are putting you in this cycle of basically victimhood, because boundaries are the direct pathway to releasing yourself from feeling like a victim. And the whole thing about this topic is that the reason why it's so crucial also is because our whole mission of creating a legacy of healing 7 generations before and after us in the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement is all about us being able to understand how to stop abandoning ourselves. And that is closely related to what boundaries are all about. And in our upcoming live healing session, which is going to be in our private Facebook group, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement, you can click the link below in the description to join us there. This is complimentary for all of you, especially because of the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy and Satori not being open for enrollment. So you can start at the free Facebook group where I post daily, and you can get more information on what generational healing is all about. We do host a weekly Wednesday live healing session where you can ask me all questions and of course engage with other community members on this very deep healing journey of generational healing. But for now, I want to really lay out the groundwork of understanding this very transformative approach of boundary setting in order to release victimhood, because I think it's so crucial for women to understand. I feel that women fall under two sections. They either they either don't know how to set boundaries or they're setting boundaries incorrectly. So they've never heard of boundaries, or they think that setting boundaries has to do about protection for themselves. When I'm going to tell you already and give you a preview that setting boundaries has nothing to do about protecting you. Just let that marinate, because setting boundaries has nothing to do with you protecting you. In fact, traditional therapy, traditional books, you're going to hear everyone say, oh, you need to set the boundaries because you need to protect yourself. If you are doing it that way, that is why you're repeating the same patterns over and over and over. But before we talk about that, let's understand why boundaries are necessary and how they're related to victimhood. You see, generational trauma, what does it do? Very often and very unconsciously, when we've been through patterns of lineage after lineage, where there's addiction, where there's childhood abandonment, abuse, depression, toxic relationships, right? A divorce, infidelity. Those are all generational patterns. They didn't start with you, I promise you. And when we're referring to generational trauma, it perpetuates this victim mentality across family lines because it's a pattern of victimhood that's passed down through the behaviors, beliefs, and even our epigenetic changes, believe it or not. So I'll give you an example. Consider a woman who's struggling with depression since childhood. right? And depression is a lack of flow of energy and prana. Depression is you suppressing emotions. So you have not been taught how to regulate, how to process emotions, how to feel emotions. As a child, you were told not to cry, not to be a bad girl, all these different things. That's depression. So think of a woman now 25 years old, and she's struggling with depression, but she's been struggling with depression for a long time. She grew up believing pretty much that she was worthless and incapable. Why? Because mom had depression. And mom, as much as she wanted to be there for her daughter, couldn't be there for her. Or dad was missing in the picture. Or mother died tragically, whatever that looked like, right? Her mother, driven by her own insecurities, would basically help her daughter complete all her homework assignments because she felt sorry for her. She would basically reinforce the belief that her daughter wasn't smart enough to succeed on her own. This pattern, believe it or not, mom was feeling so guilty because she's always depressed and she can't be there for you the way you need her to be there for you. So you struggle with homework. So now I'm a mother who feels guilty. So instead of helping you with your homework, I'm just going to do your homework for you. This is a pattern of rescuing. And it's perpetuated the young girl to become a victim. She takes now on this role of being a victim. It's a classic example of how this drama triangle plays out in families of victimhood, with the roles of victimhood being victim, rescuer, and then persecutor, being passed down generation to generation to generation. Because when we're stuck in this victim mindset, we feel powerless to change our circumstances. We blame others or past events for our current struggles. And if you grew up with a mother who felt really guilty, or if you're a mother who is really, really guilty and you go rescue your kids all the time, you are creating this persona, this identification of victimhood within them because you feel guilty of not being able to heal yourself. And energetically, this victimhood, it creates blockages in our energy centers, our chakras, particularly what is known as the solar plexus, which is right here. This is the third energetic body. And when we are constantly feeling victimized by the world or what we went through, we lose our sense of personal power. Energy gets stuck at the lower root chakra. The same emotions being processed because there's no inner work to help bring the energy that's coiled at the root, which is white tantric energy to help you heal, to the top, to the crown, which cleanses and purifies. And through Kundalini yoga, breathing, meditation, chanting techniques. So now your solar plexus is completely broken. Now you don't sit in your personal power. And psychologically, it reinforces these negative self-beliefs and limits about our ability to take positive actions in our life. Now, boundaries in the general sense, I'm going to explain them to you if you were to look them up in a dictionary, but then I'm going to give you the real meaning of them. Because healthy boundaries, first of all, they're essential for your own personal sovereignty. The biggest thing that we do when we've been through patterns of generational trauma, especially if there's childhood neglect, abandonment, abuse, is that we learn to abandon ourselves. We learn to stop paying attention to our emotions, to take care of others first, save the world before we could ever come back to ourselves. And boundaries, they're not walls to keep others out. They're clear lines that define where we end and the others begin. So when we're talking about generational healing, that's what the traditional definition would be. That's not the real definition. The traditional definition is going to tell you, here's where you start and here's where the other person ends. That's not the truth, because we're actually all one. And why we set boundaries is not to protect ourselves. It's to protect that person from their own unconscious behavior, because we're protected. In the context of generational healing, boundaries help us disrupt these harmful patterns by asserting our right to choose a different response, which is what? To stop abandoning ourselves. So someone like this example that I gave you of the young girl who was rescued by her mom, and then later as an adult felt like a victim, always needing to be rescued. Setting boundaries might start with her recognizing her own capabilities and refusing help when she knows she can complete the tasks herself. It might actually mean learning to say no to her mother's offers to rescue her, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. But she's not doing it to save herself. She's doing it to save her mom from her own guilty mind. See the difference? Big difference. That is why, as I studied boundaries through A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy, I thought to myself, everybody needs to hear this. If everybody, it wasn't until I understood it and I applied it from A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy perspective, which now I teach, that literally none of my boundaries were ever broken. I was doing boundaries the way everyone else used to tell me to do boundaries, right? Protect yourself. You know, you need to make sure that person gets what they deserve. That only made, sure, that person disappeared from my life, right? I no longer, my boundaries, get out of my life because I need protection from you. Sure, that person would not show up in my life, but guess what? There would be a replica of that person in the grocery store as part of my business, a client of mine. Why? Because when we are setting boundaries, thinking that we need to protect ourselves, we're not ending the cycle. And here's where A Course in Miracles' perspective on boundaries is completely revolutionary and so profound that it allows you to completely release yourself from victimhood and understand what true boundaries are all about, which are necessary, especially as you begin your generational healing journey. Because through A Course in Miracles, what it teaches us is that boundaries are basically, it's true sovereignty, true empowerment that comes from you recognizing your inherent worth, your inherent wholeness, your inherent innocence as a spiritual being having this physical experience. And think about our brother Jesus Christ, our model for Christ consciousness and healing, our teacher for innocence and purity. Our brother Jesus Christ, religion will tell you that he suffered on that cross, right? But think about it, even whether you've studied the story of Jesus Christ through religion or through A Course in Miracles like I have, I've also studied it through religion and the historical teachings of Jesus Christ as well. But think about it, you know, Jesus Christ was never a victim. The Course says that the message the crucifixion was intended to teach was that it is not necessary to perceive any form of assault and persecution because you cannot be persecuted. Our brother Jesus Christ never victimized himself. He prophesied. He knew what was going to happen. He was on that cross and he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do," because he had healed his mind and allowed the Christ consciousness to be born in us. And he said, you can do that too, and you will do that. So they want us to feel that our brother Jesus Christ was a victim so that we could feel guilty about that. When our brother Jesus Christ was empowered, sovereign, he resurrected. He came to teach us about the resurrection, not the crucifixion. He came to teach us about a holy, beautiful, loving God that would never abandon his or her child, especially during a time of need like that. Our brother Jesus Christ was not abandoned by God, and he was able to transcend his body through meditation. Many of the meditations we practice in Kundalini Yoga are said to have come from those early years of Jesus Christ as he was teaching meditation from the ages of 11 to 33. And this radical shift in your perception, what does it do? It invites you to see beyond this appearance of victimhood, of instead looking at our brother Jesus Christ as empowered, as sovereign, as holy, as the ability to not take stuff personal, even if it gets as bad as what he went through. So when it comes to boundaries, what the Course does is that it gives us a really unique, different approach. What happens is that setting boundaries with love and for the other person's benefit, not for self-protection, is what breaks the pattern. If you are taking stuff personal, and I know it's easier said than done, and we need a lot of your nervous system to be regulated through this inner work and your brain to be rewired. But think about it. If there was a generational trauma pattern in your life, childhood abuse. Maybe there's grief from death. Maybe there's situations where there was physical abuse, right? Sexual abuse, all these different abuses, right? You then believe, because there's been this illusion through the trauma that you're separate from God, that you need to protect yourself, that you need to set up these walls. And the whole thing about this is that we are in a university, and the only way to graduate from this university is to do what our brother Jesus Christ did, which is to forgive unconditionally. So when you see someone that is acting unconsciously, when somebody, you have your own value systems, right? People often say, I have my boundaries, and if you break my boundaries, here's the consequence. That's not a boundary. That's a value system. So you have value systems that some people do not honor. So now you have to create a boundary to protect that person from themselves, not honoring your value system, not to protect you from them. And that's the whole thing. When we've been through generational patterns of trauma, you hate the other person that did this to you. You want the other person to be gone from this earth, right? You want anything so that person can be far away from you, never close to you. And the thing is that because you haven't done the healing work, you still hold a lot of resentment. You still hold a lot of hate or anger, even though you set the boundary and you told the person you're never allowed to see me again. Well, guess what? That person's never going to see you again. But because you have not healed, you have not forgiven, guess what? Your next relationship is going to be that person. Like I said, a client of yours is going to be that person. The person that cuts you off at the grocery store, on the freeway, is going to be that person. When I started to create boundaries from a place of love, from a place of like, my goodness, you are in so much pain that you believe that in order for you to seek attention or to seek love, that you have to project out your pain towards me or towards other people. I see your pain, but I know who I am, and I don't have to accept my gift. Then setting a boundary might look like, especially in a situation with generational healing, 1,000%. When you heal yourself 7 generations before and after you're healed, but it's not all love and light. It might get worse before it gets better. And many of us, or some of you, might have a situation where there is no possibility of you being able to have a relationship with your mother or your father because they're so mentally ill, right? So a boundary would not be, I'm leaving you and I'm never going to see you again because you are a horrible mother, you're a horrible father, and you deserve to die or are the scum of the earth. That's not that's not a boundary that will heal everyone. A boundary will be, I've tried many times to approach you, to talk to you in different ways, and here are the reasons why I feel uncomfortable being around this energy. So in order to protect all of us, what I've decided is to take some space, to take some time, and truly mean that. Because when you've healed yourself, you're not doing this again to protect you. You're doing this so that that person can get a reality check. But if you come from a place of guilt, a place of anger, then that person is only going to retaliate and project their pain back, not only to you, but they've already been doing this to the entire world. And I know you might say, well, who cares? I'm the one that was hurt. Why do I have to be the bigger person? Because you don't want to repeat this pattern again. Because you don't want to continue to align with the same replica of this human being who maybe even died already. It's so crucial for you to really understand that setting boundaries is about protecting others from their own harmful behaviors, not from you. And this is why the course's emphasis and a lot of the shadow work that we do inside of my academy, and which I coach women through, is the process of salvation, which is forgiveness. And being able to see the divine, holy nature in you, the Christ consciousness, so that you can see that in others. And this is not about condoning or bypassing, pretending nothing happened. Not at all. It's about disrupting the pattern at the root and healing 7 generations before and after you. A big part of this requires uncomfortable conversations and an acknowledgement of what has occurred. But through that step comes the healing journey, which is surrender, acceptance, and changing the only thing we can change, which is our perception of why we think something happened. Because most of us take things personal, and we think that things that happen to us are reflective of our worth, or because we believe we might be unlovable, when that has nothing to do with it. If you experience traumatic experiences or challenges, it has nothing to do with your worth. It has to do with how unconscious that other person was. So it's so important. Like I said, this is so layered, and I'm going to go deeper into the spiritual psychotherapy of this in our Wednesday's live healing session at 9 a.m. in our closed Facebook group. So there's a link below. You can join us there for all women, complimentary. And this will be on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So if you can't join us live, you can catch the replay in there as well, where we're going to go deeper into actual examples of what this looks like. Now, from a Kundalini yoga therapist perspective, we understand boundaries energetically. Everything in this world is energy. But what we have to understand is boundaries have a lot to do with our aura. This is the field, the electromagnetic field, that is our energetic boundary. When you have a weak aura, your aura weakens, your electromagnetic field weakens, you have a weak immune system, you're easily spiritually attacked, you easily take things personal. That the root of that is, of course, our thoughts. Thoughts, feelings, and emotions either create a thick aura or a weak aura. And high vibrational thoughts like gratitude, faith, and hope, of course, are what create a strong aura. And that's why we meditate, to regulate the nervous system, the brain, so that we can have higher frequency thoughts, so that we can have a really strong, beautiful aura that usually 8 to 9 feet out. There's a woman in my community this morning who said she was in Sedona, which is a really sacred place, and doing a lot of healing work. And then she could actually sense and feel her aura being 10 to 12 feet out. That's what it means to have a very strong aura. And this strong aura is your energetic shield, but it's also your energetic boundaries. Because based on your energy, imagine if you're having thoughts of gratitude, faith, hope, people are going to sense that. Your energy speaks louder than words. That's your electromagnetic field. They don't disrespect people that are in this high vibration. They don't overstep boundaries. People overstep boundaries on people that they feel that they can get away with it. So if you have a really weak aura, it's not going to protect you from these attacks from the outer world. People are going to sense that you are dysregulated, that you are in low frequency emotions like anxiety, chronic stress, all these different things. So what are you going to do? You're going to attract like a magnet more people that are in that state of consciousness, which is more people that are going to overstep your value systems or your boundaries. You see how that works? Generational trauma, it leads to a dysregulated nervous system. So it makes it difficult to sense and maintain a strong energetic boundary in your aura, because this dysregulation leads to chronic stress, to anxiety, to this hypervigilance. It affects our cardiovascular system, leading to issues like hypertension and heart palpitations. So through Kundalini yoga practices, meditation, which we practice in our complementary Facebook group as well on Wednesdays, we can regulate our nervous system, we can rewire our brain, we can develop a stronger sense of energetic boundaries in general. So different practices stimulate different aspects of our being, like the vagus nerve, or different aspects of the nervous system. All of these things reduce the fight or flight response that's triggered by what we perceive as boundary violations. And this is important because a big part of the healing journey, especially generational healing, is some of us continue to be doormats. Some of us, the lesson we need to learn is how to actually walk away from a relationship, how to walk away from the mingling you even do with your parents until you go get strong. It doesn't mean walk away and completely shun them out, because even if they're not here in your life, you still need to walk away. But guess what? You still need to do the healing work, because forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is to be set free from this pattern once and for all. And yes, it's going to impact them, but why wouldn't you want that to be impacted? Why wouldn't you want them to be impacted? As much as you might see them as your biggest enemy, if you actually heal yourself and you see them through the eyes of Christ, the enemy, the Judas, whatever, whoever you consider to be your enemy, then they're not going to be able to do that harm to anyone else anymore. They're not going to want to. That breaks the cycle. So there's a lot of different techniques that it can help stimulate these aspects of the nervous system and the brain that help us really strengthen our auric field so that we can have very strong energetic boundaries so that people can sense them. You don't even have to speak them. When you have a strong aura, they know your boundaries. Respect is there. It's because you have such a weak aura that other people can feel that they can just infiltrate it. So, as you can see, we've explored some aspects of boundaries, and they are a very powerful tool for healing, especially as it relates to victimhood and generational trauma patterns. But you have to remember, by setting loving limits, boundaries to protect that person from themselves, that's when you reclaim your sovereignty. And you cannot do that without you healing yourself first. It's impossible for you to set loving boundaries. You're always going to come from a place of victimhood. You're always going to come from a place of anger, a place of frustration when you haven't done the healing work yourself. And if you really don't want these boundaries to continue to be broken, whether that's through a partner, whether that's from a parent, whether that's from a child, then you have to reverse engineer and heal yourself in order for you to really learn to set these really important boundaries in your life. So we've explored boundaries. And if you want to go deeper with us as it relates to releasing victimhood, then join us on Wednesday, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Our Facebook group is the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. And we will be talking deeper into that as well as meditate. We're going to be practicing this month's meditation to help us all really learn how to get to the root cause energetically. And so now that we've explored all these practical ways to heal generational trauma, let's turn to the wisdom of our ancestors and the tarot for further guidance. Our weekly tarot this week is offering us so much insights as it relates to what we've been talking about, releasing victimhood, stepping into our power, and knowing the true essence of energetic boundaries. So let's start with this week's weekly ancestral reading. Now, where did I leave my cards? Here they are. Beautiful deck here. For any of you, some of you have asked the deck. It's actually created by Eugene Vinitsky, and it's called Tarot Alma Latina. So it's not the traditional sense. It has all of these different new images that are all related to like teachings from indigenous tribes in Mexico, which is really, really cool. And for me, it's like amazing because I get to learn both. However, still traditional tarot. So pulled 3 cards for us this week. And the first card that came out in the immediate past, and this is the energy for the week, is the 5 of Coins, upright. So 5 of Pentacles, sometimes known. 5 is the number of transformation. This is energy that's from the Taurus astrological sign. So this is grounding energy, transformation, major change. And as you can see in the picture, here's the thing that you really need to pay attention to. Yes, there is a gentleman here that looks like he's been through a lot. He's holding his hand in his face. And then there's a woman that's walking right behind him. Problem here is that they're not paying attention to the church at the top. And they're not paying attention that in this church, the lights are actually on. So the immediate past, what this is saying to us is that we're coming from a time where we may have struggled with scarcity mindset. But beyond like financial struggle or maybe material loss that you've been through, there was spiritual poverty here. And why spiritual poverty? Well, because look at how the lights are on and you're not paying attention. You felt abandoned. You felt lonely. And the illuminated window here, it represents the warmth and comfort that seems inaccessible, which highlights why we were feeling excluded or alone or isolated. It's like we were learning how to have faith. We were learning how to trust God. We were learning how to connect more deeply to God's guidance. You may have even gone through some health concerns, some physical challenges. The figure on the crutches here represents especially physical ailments. That's why Virgo season, as we enter Virgo season, the big pressure and the push is on your physical healing, which is supporting us. So this is a good time for you to be aware that in your immediate past, you were going through this. There was spiritual poverty, there was disconnection, the church symbolizing, but we have all the answers for you. And this is not in a religious context. This is representation of God, a representation of your guides that are suggesting, hey, maybe if you have a little bit of faith and look up, you're going to see the solution. So what this card was all about is a time where you were seeking support from a community, from maybe an outside source to help you understand the solution of your spiritual poverty. Yes, it could be material, like I said, but spiritual poverty is the worst kind of poverty because it's mindset. It's not actually really happening. It's not that you may have not had any money at all, or you were struggling terribly. It's the fact that you made a big deal out of it. You thought that way. It's not the truth. It's the mindset that has been the issue. So you've been working through this period of where you're now learning how to go from this scarcity mindset to abundance, which leads to the present moment. And in the present, we got the Six of Wands, but retrograde. Oh my goodness. I feel like this energy in the present is like the Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, this last hurrah. Because when this card is upright, the Six of Wands, like this is like a victorious rider on this white horse holding a wand adorned with a wreath celebration, right? But upside down, guess what? Now the rider, you, might be struggling to maintain balance, and you are not hearing any cheers. There's no recognition from the crowd. This Six of Wands is represented by the energy of Leo, confidence, standing in our truth, being bold, right? And it's also represented by six, which is about harmony and balance, responsibility, but also your thoughts manifesting at quantum speed. Whatever you believe, that is what is your reality. So what this card is saying is that even though you were going through this hard period, as the Five of Coins shows, where you were working through spiritual poverty, you're now here. You've been kicking butt, putting in all this work, but now there's like no recognition. There's no like victory parade for you. Like no one is paying attention that we've overcame all these obstacles. And so what is that doing? Self-doubt, insecurity. Why? Because you need validation for some reason. So now you feel disappointed in your achievements. Now you're like, what was this all for? What's the point? Or maybe you are actually receiving criticism and judgment from people. Instead of them cheering you on, they're like, why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that. Or maybe you're getting comments on your social media. Remember, if you're not triggering someone, you're not doing something right. So enemies or haters are a great way to know that you're really stirring the pot, that you're really making people's emotions come alive, right? But for some reason, what you're learning, and that's the hard lesson, is to release the need for validation. Because reverse, the true victory that's happening, and I believe that this is what Uranus retrograde and Pluto retrograde in Capricorn is all about, is this true victory that's coming from within you. It's not coming from validation or external accolades. So what this card is saying is that keep going. Understand that success sometimes is very, very silent. And that if you're still attached to getting approval from someone, that's what's driving your actions, that you need to correct that very quickly. Because that's a perfect formula for your ultimate demise. Imagine caring what people think about you. You'll never do anything. Because I promise you that the bigger you get, the bigger the opposition as well. So now in the future, because we're working with this energy, the third card that we received was the Queen of Coins, reversed. So the Queen of Coins is very nurturing. She's Capricorn energy, Taurus energy. She's symbolized by the number 13, which breaks down to the number 4, which is all about, yes, stability, foundation, practicality, but also your angels, your ancestors guarding you and taking care of you. Now, upside down, upright, she's taking care of everyone. She's nurturing her friends, her family, her businesses, all that. Upside down, what she's doing is now she's bringing that attention inward. And again, this is Pluto going retrograde. This is Uranus going retrograde. This is a regal woman who's sitting on a throne now and adorned with all these jewels and flowers, right? But the whole thing is that instead of her being focused on nurturing and providing for others, she's now turning inward and putting that caring energy to herself. She's creating financial independence. Perhaps she's working for herself. Maybe she's starting her own business, making her own money to support her lifestyles. So this card is all about us releasing the insecurity of self-worth or not being worthy. Because the Queen's regal posture might be compromised in the reversal, where there might be doubts about one's ability to provide and nurture. And you know why? Because women are so, it challenges them so much to nurture themselves. We're so good as women to nurturing everyone else. Everyone else. But when it comes to us, it's like we feel selfish. We feel egotistical. But what the Queen is saying is that there is no way that you can finally overcome this spiritual poverty, that you can finally understand your intrinsic worth, and I need validation from an outer world if you don't take care of you first. If you don't understand your own regal royalness. If you don't crown yourself. So any doubts about the abilities that are coming up have to do with an imbalance. And it could have to do with an imbalance in your work life. Like maybe you're putting too much time in work and not a lot of time in your life, personal life, which is creating resentment, right? But also it's the lack of balance between your divine feminine and your masculine energy. Why? Because the divine feminine is nurturing, creative, but the masculine is the action oriented. So the Queen knows when to activate each aspect of her energetic foundation. So what this card is saying is that you need grounding right now. You need a lot of self-care. All three of them, earth energy. It's calling you for you to return to your own nurturing. If you really want to avoid this again, spiritual poverty, and you want to know your intrinsic worth, start to create rituals. That's what Virgo season is all about. Rituals around, how am I going to take care of myself? To be in the best position to be able to take care of others, especially with the energy that is upon us, right? So what the ancestral reading is revealing to us is a journey, a beautiful journey, even though challenging at times, towards a much needed inner balance and reconnection with our practical nurturing nature. As we close, you'll see Five of Pentacles in the immediate past is as your ancestors are showing you that you weathered a period of a lot of material and maybe spiritual hardship, that you struggled through the storm, right? But it also is telling us of the support that has always been there for you, ancestors, God, and the strength that you actually found because of these struggles. And the Six of Wands, it's just indicating this period we're in, where you might feel that your efforts are going unrecognized. It's a big call to action to find your sense of achievement and worth from within, rather than relying on the accolades of others. And if you can do that, guess what? The Queen of Coins, even though it's reversed, because she wants you to nurture yourself, she'll become upright. She'll be able to know what is a good miracle for her to perform, to give by asking God, and which are the ones that she shouldn't perform, and how she needs to stop neglecting her self-care. That's the only reason why you were here to begin. So this is a reminder to stay grounded, to create this balanced, nurturing environment as we get closer to the equinox. Is going to be key to recognize your intrinsic worth, cultivating this aspect or perception of yourself as who you truly are, created in the image of God. So if you try this week to really embody those nurturing practical energies of the Queen of Pentacles by creating these small rituals of self-care, you tend to your immediate environment and you practice finding gratitude in the process of your efforts, in the process of who you are becoming or have become, the ancestors are going to be right behind you. continuing to remind you, continuing to bring you the synchronicities that you need to reaffirm that you're on the right path. So this has been such a beautiful time. This is such a beautiful time to be alive. And this week, as we close out the month of August and we step into September, the one thing that I will tell you is to prepare for your success. Because so much is changing so quickly, the one thing that you will need to be very, very cognizant of is the regulation of your nervous system and the rewiring of your brain so that you can stop operating on these patterns of generational trauma that don't serve you. So thank you so much for joining us this week on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast. I want to remind you all that together we are breaking generational. We're creating a legacy of healing 7 generations before and after. That is so powerful. And for that, I thank you. For your courage, I thank you. I want you to remember that your healing journey is a gift to you, your children, your parents, your ancestors, and to all future generations. Until next time, may you walk in sovereignty, grounded in both spirit and science.